You go to a Scrum Master interview and you are asked a question regarding SAFe, right? And the question you are asked is, tell me about your experience working in SAFe environment as a Scrum Master. That's like a broad interview question, right? So ways how I've answered this interview question is also to give broad answer, right? Because I'm not asked simple specific thing that I do in SAFe, but instead, what do I do in general? And the key trick about this question is about you not basically taking your whole time explaining everything you do in SAFe, but instead summarize and touch on key notes and key things that you do that they'll indicate to this interviewer that yes, you do have experience working in SAFe environment. And ways how I've answered this in the interview is basically to state that yes, I'm familiar working in SAFe. Currently, I work with other Scrum Masters. I work with Scrum teams where we collaboratively work with our release train engineer. I'm part of one agile release train, and we all work in the same program board. And we collaboratively discuss all the product we'll be working on, and we identify dependency, any risks, any issues. And every quarterly, we do our PI planning, and we continue to deliver this value. And one thing about my environment in SAFe, we do our own scaling differently. I don't know about other companies, because my company, we have like all of us all working under the same program board. And at the same time, as a team, we have our own team backlog and we also have our program backlog. And we will meet for our Scrum of Scrum. We do our system demo. And also at the end of each PI, we also do our inspect and adapt. So summarize that point about basically your answer, and that will tell this interviewer like, oh yes, so basically this sounds like SAFe and this is something that you do. And sometimes it can be very difficult, like something that you do day to day as a Scrum Master, for you now to try to articulate those in sentence and now present it to in interviews, right? If you think about it, I literally gave overall summary on what I do in a SAFe environment. And I'm not just sitting down giving definition of what is SAFe, right? Because if they wanted to know what is SAFe, I don't think you will hardly go to a Scrum Master interview where they will ask you what is SAFe. And if they do ask you that question, you basically just, in that case, I'll definitely just give textbook definition, right? SAFe is doing agile at scale at enterprise level. Simple as that. But when you are asked open-ended question, it's very important for you to also give open-ended answer and basically list those things that you do. Welcome back to Aisha Scrum. I am very happy to have you all, and thank you all for all the like, share, comments, for all the love you've been showing to this Aisha Scrum platform. And if you are a new subscriber or you are new to this channel, this is a place where we discuss all things Agile and all things Scrum and ways how you can help yourself to scale up in your job and also maybe looking for a job or trying to even come in to be an Agile practitioner. And if you're interested in mentorship, don't hesitate to email me down below or comment or chat. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing like typical question you might be asked when you go to a SAFe interview. I'm going to be answering, I just answered one of the questions, right? And everything you might be asked and what to expect in a SAFe Scrum interview. And I'm saying SAFe Scrum interview because you'll be like, okay, Aisha, how can I even know that I'm going to a SAFe Scrum interview, right? So you have to look at the job description, right? If you notice one of my long 2 months ago video I did about mistakes Scrum Masters do prior to going to interview, one of them is being that without reading the job description, right? So before you go to any interview, please take your time, look at the job description, and by you reading that job description, you will know what type of interview question you can prep yourself, like watching YouTube video or question you can expect in this interview. So it's very, very important you read that job description. And when you do read that job description, you're going to see 100% stuff about SAFe. And in those things that you know that, oh, I have to prep for potential SAFe interview question. Because why? This company that I'm interviewing for, it's a SAFe environment. And you can even go further, right? By going to the company and researching about them. So the next question too you might be asked is, how many teams do you support under the Agile release train, right? And for you all know, like in SAFe, for the most part, for multiple teams, they'll be under one agile release train. And the agile release train, there'll be a release train engineer that's supporting all the Scrum Master and all the teams under that art. And sometimes you all work in the same program board, and also being part of a SAFe environment where we did not work in the same program board. But I know for the most part, so you'll see like SAFe, all the people under the arts, they all have the same program board, but then the team will have their own team backlog. So how I've answered this interview question, how many teams I have in my arts, I'll just basically describe. Currently, I have 2 teams under my arts, and I work collaboratively with other teams because we do have inter-team dependency. And I have one team and we're doing so and so project. And I have my other team, we're working on different part of this interface in that, and you can talk about the team that's made up. If you have like developers, QA, or UX designer, you can list all of those about that team in each of those teams. And simple. Because why? They just ask you how many teams you have under this art. You don't have to like explain everything that happened in the whole art, but basically you are focused on what you do in your own art. So that's that for that question. So the next question you might be asked is, how do you calculate your team capacity to prep you for the upcoming PI planning, right? Because we all know that in SAFe, capacity planning is very, very important, right? Although it can change, right? But at least having some kind of draft on capacity prior to going to PI planning is very important, because that's how you can help determine how much workload in each of the sprints a team can take. And a Scrum Master play a huge role in coming up with that. And it's very important to know that every company do capacity planning differently, and every company do this differently. So when you go to an interview and you're asked about capacity planning, you should 100% discuss about your own company way of doing it, right? It might not be, there's no any right or wrong answer, as long as you explain what you've been doing at work. So ways I've answered this in the interview question about capacity planning, I always start about my company way, mentioning the company way of doing this. Oh yes, currently my company, like the way how we do capacity planning, we do like 1 story point 1 day, right? 1 story point of a developer completing a 1 story point, it equals to 1 day of work. And I use that technique to able to come up with the capacity for the upcoming PI, and also then for our sprint planning itself. And we allocate 80% out of that 10 days of the sprint, and we have 20% for any like meetings or engineering meetings or Scrum of Scrum meetings, product sync meetings, dependency meetings, all those other meetings allocate for 20%. And for our tech lead in our company, we have them all at 50% delivery, and the other 50% of overhead doing miscellaneous things. Because why? Our tech lead supports the team more than, and to have a lot more other tasks they have to do. So that's how I deal with team capacity. Another thing that I do to help my team and to help us is for me to start this ahead of time, like maybe 3 weeks prior to the PI planning, and to start having that conversation with the team and asking about any planned vacation, also taking out PTO from any of the team member, or people that are having baby or are traveling, getting married, taking all of these things out of our capacity planner, and also taking out offshore holiday, because my team, we do have teams that are distributed all over the world. Take out the offshore holiday, take out the onshore holidays, and at least get my regular draft for the capacity based on the technique of the 1 story point 1 day, and each of the team member having 80% capacity of doing the work, right? So, and then during PI planning, we allocate work based on that. And I continue to readjust our capacity planner until the day of PI planning. We have our draft and also our last readout. And during sprint planning, I still go back and readjust the capacity planning, because things can change. Although I might do this like maybe like 2 weeks prior and 1 week prior, but sometimes people can leave and some people get sick, right? Sometimes you have turnovers, right? Or something can happen, someone can get sick, cannot be participating in the teamwork anymore. So I continue to readjust that until I see it meet our team. Although we might have our capacity number of story points that our team can commit to, But in my company, we are also allowed to include our average velocity. So we look at our average velocity and also look at our capacity in story point that we see availability and try to be between that when we try to commit to in our sprint. So that's how my company will do our capacity planning, and that's how I will do it. Thank you for that question. So that's how I would definitely answer about the capacity planning in an interview. Basically, just explain what I do, and the company cannot tell me, oh no, you are wrong, or why? Because that's how my own company do it. Of course, maybe if I do get hired in their company, I may have to learn their own company of doing things. So the next interview question I'm going to be answering and also going to be coaching about is about how many iterations do you have in your PI? You might be asked simple question like that. So in this case, when you are asked how many iterations you have in PI, I know like in SAFe they call sprint iteration sprint is the same thing, right? You'll definitely tell them what your current company or maybe your previous company, but just stick to one. If you've always worked in SAFe environment and you notice that in one company they have 5 iteration in one PI, in another company they have 6 iteration in one PI, or I also have seen a company too that have like 10 iteration in one PI. Basically, you don't have to say, oh, I went to this company, we have 6 iteration. I went to that company, we have 5. No, just choose one of them that you are most comfortable about, or the one that you actually create a huge impact in that company, and base all your scenarios into that company. Because why? That's where you were able to have a lot of challenges, and you will grow with that company, you grew with your team, and at the end you were able to get your team to that high performing. That's how I've done it. I will always choose that one company that I know that I made a huge impact on, and base all my answers on that company so that I won't be all over the place answering myself or repeating myself, because sometimes that can be annoying in an interview. So I'll definitely stick by saying that currently in my company we have 6 iteration in our PI, and we have 5 iteration for development work, and we have our last iteration, which is the 6th iteration for our innovation and planning, the IP sprint. That's it. So I'm not going to keep going, digging myself back and forth and start explaining everything what happened in the iteration. They did not ask me that. They just asked me how many iterations I have in my PI. And I told them that we have 6 iterations and 5 of them is for work. And our last iteration, the IP sprint, and is where we do our innovation and planning. Simple as that. So the next question I'm going to be answering is another very popular one. You hardly go to a SAFe Scrum Master interview whereby they will not ask you about PI planning, right? So they will always ask you about PI planning. As soon as you look at the job description and you see SAFe, anything about SAFe, right away start reviewing about PI planning, or start going back to your notes or reading or even watching YouTube videos about PI planning. I have a lot of YouTube video about what the Scrum Master do prior to PI planning and during PI planning. If you missed those videos, link down below. You can definitely see those videos. You should definitely refer to those so you can 100% sure it's gonna help you too in your SAFe interviews that you'll be having. So how I've answered about PI planning is basically summarize things I do before PI planning and also touch on during PI planning. And ways how I've answered it in the interview question, but I always start off as saying that what I do in PI planning or prior to PI planning is basically to link up with my PO and discuss our current state of work, right? We discuss our current state of work so that we can know how we can plan for the upcoming PI planning. And I start by looking at our futures, and we go over those futures, look at where we currently stand with those. Are we at risk of completing them? Are we not at risk of completing them? So what happens if those futures are spillovers? What's going to happen? What about tech debt item? Talking to the developers and the engineers themselves, and also creating a pre-PI planning meeting session with the whole Scrum team. And we come together in this meeting and basically just discuss our current states and go over our futures and look at what we can able to accomplish in this PI, or what are potential spillover for next PI. And also the PO might sometimes even have to narrow down our priority, because remember, we have to continue reprioritizing these futures until hopefully we can able to deliver the highest priority value for the customer and the company, right? So we continue having this conversation, and at the end, the PO sometimes we're able to narrow it down. And for the most part, we'll close some of those features. And then the next thing I will do, I will definitely connect with my PO and discuss the next feature my team will be assigned to, and start narrowing those down, or also collaborating with my PO and ensure that that's in place. So during our IP sprint, while the engineers sometimes working on tech debt item, we also will start splitting those features. So during the PI planning, it will be easier for us to use that time to track our dependency, follow up on risks, and follow up on and breakout session with any other team we might have dependency or external or internal dependency with. And during the PI planning too, the PO and I will continue to collaborate with the team. We come up with our objective, our goals, and also we talk about what we're going to be committed for this sprint. And we start doing our splitting up the user story. And then during the PI planning, we do our breakout session with the team that we are dependent on, and also together to us too as a team. And we continue to do that until we are able to come to a consensual agreement on features and stories we'll be working on for the upcoming PI. So that's how I've answered that question. I personalize it with what I've been doing, and I personalize it with things that I've done to help me and my team to get us to move forward by early planning, early communication, early risks, identifying those risks, identifying our internal dependency, identifying our external dependency, and building those relationships ahead of time so that we can able to deliver this value at the end of each PI, So that's how I answer that PI question. And if you missed my PI planning videos, look down below and definitely look at that. I have more detail on what I do during PI planning that also can definitely help you answer this in the interview question. So the next thing you're going to be asked to is, how do you manage dependency, right? You hardly go to a SAFe Scrum Master interview and not be asked about dependency. Because why is that? Because sometimes when you are put under the same train, that means that you have some kind of dependency, or you're working some kind of related products together as a team, and you will hardly ever not depend on other people under your art. So that's why it's very important as a Scrum Master to have some kind of technique you use, or some kind of ways for you to use to manage dependency. Because why? Because dependency can turn into a blocker or impediment, and we do not want that. So that's why interviewers, we always would like to know what you do as a Scrum Master and how you've managed dependencies in the past. And ways I've answered this question is basically to tell them how I currently do it, or things that my team have done in the past that got us to manage this dependency, right? Currently in my company, we have inter-team dependency and also an external dependency. Meaning that what I mean by that is I have within our team, we have dependency within my two teams that I'm working for. Because one time I do have a team we are working on a different platform Android, and also we are working on a platform that's iOS, which is the Apple phone. And we do, although it's a different application, but we have some kind of dependency among ourselves, and that I call internal dependency. And external dependency is when you are depending on people outside of your two teams that you support, or your product owner support. And that people is something that you have to reach out to a different team. They might be different under your same, or maybe a different team. It can be also outside your art, that different team that you have to create that external meeting or external follow-up to manage that dependency. So I just wanted to explain that difference in case people are wondering what is the difference between internal or external dependency. So where now I can answer this question, when it comes to dependency, I think for me, what's been so helpful for me is 4 things I've always do to help me manage dependency, which is early identification of the dependency, communication, creating that early communication about the dependency, and also being transparency about the dependency, and also following up. So these my 4 techniques have helped me manage dependency, right? And I'll further elaborate and explain how I've done this, because there was a time my team, and that's when you have to give scenario answer too. There was a time my team, we had an external team dependency, And during our pre-PI planning conversation, it came up that we had an external team that we are going to be depending on. And as soon as I was told that, and as soon as the PO was seeing that, I took note about that and I started to investigate how I can communicate with that team, how I can approach that team Scrum Master, and how we can meet with the product owner for that team, and how can my team also build relationship with that team. Because in order for us to complete the tasks in sprint 3, they must complete their tasks in sprint 2. So I did that early identification by knowing all of that. And the next thing I did was to build some kind of communication with the team. And I set up a meeting with the Scrum Master of that team to follow up with them and discuss if they are aware that we are depending on them to complete their tasks in sprint 2 so that we can able to work on this in sprint 3. And the Scrum Master stated that yes, they were aware of it. I was like, okay, I just want to build this relationship because we're going to continue following up with them. So how do they feel about us having bi-weekly session, right? How do they feel about us having that bi-weekly session to ensure that that's there? Or basically, because that's like a future. It's not like some kind of story that we're dealing with here. So it was going to take more than a sprint to complete. And the Scrum Master agreed, and we'll meet up, and we also created a channel on Teams for that dependency so we can have continual communication, because that's very, very crucial and very important for an external dependency. So when that's done, another thing that I did for transparency is to ensure that I link the tickets from that team to my team's board so that we can see about where their progress in doing it. So although currently in sprint 2, we cannot commit to that work, instead what we did was to basically create a tracker ticket on Jira and called it like Team Dependency B on that ticket so that we are also aware that we have to follow up with that team. And every morning during daily Scrum, we bring it up in our conversation. And it's also in our backlog. We do not give it any estimates because we are not the one doing the work. But for transparency purposes, we have it on the board so that we can ensure that we also are truly following up with that so we don't miss it, because it is so crucial in order for my team to be able to work on this sprint 3. And also, I continue to follow up with them and continue to get updates and also look at the ticket that we linked below to see the progress, because you can also see that on Jira. And that's how I do my 4 that I've listed, and that's how I was able to do it. Use scenario to explain how I've done that. Another thing, sometimes if you have a lot of inter-team dependency, how I've done this and how I've approached the inter-team dependency is to also link those tickets on Jira and create like a quick filter about that dependency, because yes, you can do that on Jira. I even plan to show you all later on how to do that on Jira, and also create a dashboard on Jira and now have all those lists of that dependency on Jira. So I can also one click and basically see the whole progress of that dependency. So that's how I've answered this question in an interview. And you should definitely also try to come up with your own scenario or come up with your own way of answering dependency question. And I hope this also can help you narrow down your own way of currently doing it, or maybe even give you tips to do your own this way. So the next question you're going to be asked about in a SAFe Scrum Master interview is, tell me about Scrum of Scrum. And this question, I must say that I've seen Scrum of Scrum so different, and I've even seen people calling Scrum of Scrum Scrum of Scrum when they have the whole company in the meeting and they're calling it Scrum of Scrum. That's not Scrum of Scrum, right? So in my experience, you explain that what you've seen. The reason why I'm saying that I've seen all of this because as an agile coach, I observe a lot of teams, and sometimes I see they have names of invites, and I attend invite, and I see that looking at each people's title, and I will see that, this program manager, that product manager, this and that in that Scrum of Scrum meeting. But I know the purpose of Scrum of Scrum in meeting, basically, let me even define what the purpose of Scrum of Scrum before we even further discuss what happened in Scrum of Scrum. The purpose of Scrum of Scrum is where Scrum Masters under the same arts will link up and discuss about their own progress of their product they are working on with the release train engineer. And you have this conversation and bring up anything you have to scale up to the RTE, or identify any blockers that might prevent your team or other teams under the art from delivering this value. So, and the release train engineer will always attend Scrum of Scrum. And I've seen Scrum of Scrum that's otherwise. So that's why I'm saying it. So how I've answered it in the interview question is to basically say that in my company, currently in our Scrum of Scrum, we have our Scrum Masters and also the release train engineer, and we are all under the same art. And we come to these meetings and basically discuss any issues we might be facing or anything that can prevent us from delivering this product at the end of the sprint. And we raise up any issues we are dealing with individually in our team. Each Scrum Master can describe any foreseen risks that's happening currently in their team, or if there's people too that are not showing up, or we have high turnover. All those things we bring up during Scrum Master and discuss way how the release train engineer can help us address all those issues. So we continue to do this meeting by week, once a week, and we meet 2 times a week. It depends what your company do. If you do once a week, 2 times a week, even though if you do it bi-weekly, you make that. So that's what I've done. That's what we do in Scrum of Scrum. Answer that in the interview question. So the next interview question we're going to be discussing is, tell me about your post-PI retrospective, right? And people are like, oh, what do you mean post-PI retrospective? Because yes, it's very important for the end of every PI planning. For you as a team, you should definitely retrospect what happened in the PI. And I don't know if some company do this, but just expect that you might be going to an interview and you might be asked about your post-PI retrospective. Do you even do it? If they ask you that simple question like, oh yes, we do post-PI retrospective. And if they ask you, oh, tell me about your post-PI retrospective, like, oh yes, my team will definitely do post-PI retrospective. And what I love about post-PI retrospective, we discuss what happened prior to PI planning, during the PI, and how we can make it better in the next PI. So we discuss what went well during our PI planning and what we can change or improve and make better. And if they are all continue to ask about how confident too they are with the way how the whole PI prep went about. Do we need to change maybe like the PI, the way how we do our pre-PI planning prep? Or would this suggest maybe we do it ahead of time or early time? Or can we even start them ahead of time? Or do we don't even need maybe pre-PI planning prep? We can just go do everything in PI planning. So we have everyone's opinion and we have all this conversation and discuss. And the main purpose of this is to help us prep for the next PI coming up in the next PI. And it's very important that we do this because I noticed that when my team was not doing it, it's just like we just moving every PI and we're doing the same routine. And after we started like doing our post-PI planning retrospective, it helped us tremendously because why? We had the feedback exactly from the developers and the team members explaining what they truly want us to keep doing and what they want us to stop doing and what they want us to improve. And if you missed my my video about my last interview prep, a full interview question and difficult to answer, you should definitely look at it deep down below. And if you are interested in mentorship or in coaching, do not hesitate to contact me by email, and we are definitely open and I have teams of coaches that will do all of this to support you and give back to the community. And if you find my content valuable, I would truly appreciate for you to like and subscribe and share my channel, because to be honest, it's not easy to give a good content. It takes a lot of research, a lot of planning, and a lot of practice. So please, and I thank you all, to be honest, for your support, for your love, for your sharing everything, and I appreciate you all. And I hope to see you all again in my next video. Thank you very much.